The history of Philadelphia is central to the founding of the United States. Once pivotal in the Revolutionary War, the city became the country's first capital and today is one of its most populous cities. Philadelphia was, in the 19th century, home to a district which was described by one of its church pastors as a point of moral turpitude and extreme degradation that can hardly be surpassed by any other in the world, where thousands of immoral beings were certain to perish unless reached by direct missionary effort. It was even known as the 5 Points of Philadelphia, being compared to New York's notorious slum. There was, perhaps, no better person to witness the horrors inflicted by poverty on man, woman, and child than a priest. For he walked amongst the poor, saw the unseen, the unheard, the unspeakable, sights too lurid for pen and paper, and an audience that would be aghast to discover a truth unvarnished for polite society. Whilst there seems to be a view, at this time in the church, to see the symptoms of poverty through the eyes of moral wickedness as much as socio-economics, there was a priest in Philadelphia who, in the 1850s, a time of massive population growth through immigration, sought to bring light to some of the city's darkest places and reveal the truth about degradation and misery in one of America's largest cities. On behalf of the Bedford Street Mission, Benjamin Sewell recorded his visits amongst the poor in hope of encouraging Christian charity, known as Hell on Earth, to its impoverished citizens. Find out how life was both short and savage, for the streets were home to vagrants, drunks, and cutthroats. Philadelphia was a place where the very poorest took refuge from the dangers of the night in any shelter they could, even the dirtiest cow stable finding sanctuary in a bottle, awaiting either salvation or death. Before we move on, I would really appreciate it if you could give this video a like and share it with friends and family. If you're interested in history like this, please consider clicking the subscribe button to see more, and take a look at the channel page to discover a huge number of real and fascinating stories of everyday life in the past. If you would like to find out more about supporting us, check out the description for ways you can help us. Continue bringing the past alive. One Friday evening, a man under the influence of liquor stopped before our mission house during the progress of our religious exercises and tried to annoy us by the utterance of a multitude of the most wicked oaths. After having vented his spleen on us to his heart's content, he wended his way homeward, as well as a drunken man could, and after entering his hovel, he carefully locked himself in. Nothing more was seen or heard of him until the Wednesday following, when his friends, becoming uneasy, broke open his door, and such a sight as greeted them no pen of mine can picture. He was doubled up in the fireplace, dead, and his bones completely bared by the rats. What a death for an immoral being, whether the rats killed him while sleeping off his potations of bad whisky, or watching him until he died, then set to by hundreds in horrid feasting for several days, until his bones were perfectly cleaned of the flesh, I know not, but that ghastly sight yet makes me shudder. But I have another melancholy incident to record. It is the sad end of a woman who recently wandered into Baker Street. She was not a common loafer, at least she had not the appearance of one, for they carry the sign manual, invariably. But she got drunk in a very few hours after she made her debut among the loafers of this vile whiskey-drinking district, and while under the influence of her unnatural potations, she lay down in a court in Baker Street one night in an unconscious state. In the morning, sad to relate, she was found with her throat cut and her body much eaten by the rats, and thus ingloriously ended the life of a woman who was respectably connected, and who might have shone in society, and after a life of usefulness, died honoured and respected by all, and with a hope of a blissful inheritance in heaven. But I am afraid you will sicken at these recitals, and yet I must ask you to listen to another. In my visits one day, among the haunts of dissipation and crime, I found a woman who was, perhaps, not more than 30 years of age, though her haggard and careworn appearance indicated that she was 50. She was evidently under the influence of liquor, but not so drunk as I had seen her before. I approached her and offered to help her in any way that I could. "What a shame," said I, "that you have to make the street and the curbstone your home." "I have no place to stay, Mr. Sewell. They drove me out of that place," pointing to a cow stable close by. "The owners of this stable, I suppose, drove her out for fear she would die there, and then the coroner's inquest would unfold some more pictures for swill milk illustrations. For that cow stable was the kitchen of the house in front, and in that kitchen were kept 3 cows and a horse, almost knee-deep in dirt. And yet in this wretched place this poor woman had lived, or rather stayed, for several months, and here doubtless she would have remained and perished, had she not been forcibly ejected by the owners. Well, we offered to care for her as well as we could, but while we were talking with her, she, in her endeavours to hide her almost naked body with an old greasy shawl, exhibited a black bottle. "Now you must throw away that bottle," said I, "or I can do nothing for you. Give me that whisky, and I will make you comfortable." But she absolutely refused, and asking the crowd, who stood by, to help her, she dragged herself slowly along Shippen Street, choosing rather to lay in a cow stable, or, as the prospect now seemed, on the street, with her whisky bottle, than to enjoy a good shelter and a good bed without it. On the following day she was removed from the steps of a burning building at the corner of 7th and Shippen Streets to save her life, and thence taken by the police to the station house, where she died in a few hours. These are not isolated cases, dear listener, but only a sample of the terrible wickedness and degradation and misery concentrated in the very heart of the Quaker City. It is indeed painful to pen these sad scenes, and much more so to know that many a mother or sister or father or brother is now sitting weeping over the lost ones here referred to. Many a family are hiding themselves from the world for very shame in consequence of the profligacy of the husband and father, and many a husband, too, is sitting weeping with his offspring while the mother of his little ones is drunk on these streets, or locked up as a vagrant in Moyamensing prison. I speak that I do know, and testify that I have seen, and these suffering ones, ever before our imagination, seem to say to us by their looks, "Oh, sir, can you do nothing to save my prodigal boy, or husband, or wife, or daughter?" All this picture I have beheld with an aching heart. The outlines of it must here suffice. The details would not, could not be read or tolerated by the chaste, nor, indeed, would they be believed if written by those who have never had a view of this infected region, in which vice in all its varied forms abounds, and its sad and blighting effects on the happiness and hopes of man are ever exhibited here. The drunkard wastes away his strength for that which does no good. He madly drinks, and sees, at length, his children pine for food. And when, at last, he comes to die, he shrieks in wild affright, for snaky fiends are gathering nigh, hell opens to his sight.